Hi, Level 2 Eco. I just want to review one question from the recent end of year exam, the international trade question, the very first one in the paper. And it was question 1b. I'll show you what that looks like. Now, some of you will recall it asks you to consider a decrease in the production of dairy products as a result of the drought. And first of all, you had to show the effect of that on the supply and demand illustration, and then talk about the impact on dairy farmers, factory workers, New Zealand consumers, and the New Zealand government. So I thought what I'd do is to quickly run through the key parts of this question for you and see if we can come up with an answer that that makes a bit of sense. So if we start with the graph itself, and what are some key things that you need to notice about this graph? Well, you know, there's a couple of things. Some of you got a bit confused with the New Zealand, what you thought was the New Zealand equilibrium. And you know, some of you highlighted the New Zealand equilibrium in here and thought that had something to do with the question, but it actually has nothing to do with the question. And so in a situation where we're talking international trade, the thing that to notice about this graph is that New Zealand is facing, for milk powder, New Zealand faces a price higher than the local market equilibrium, which is great for us. Well, certainly it's great for exporters, not so great necessarily for consumers. But so the price that the market faces is the world price, and that's the price there. So this New Zealand price that, once again, some of you got yourselves a little bit confused with, is not of any relevance, and neither is that particular quantity. So that part of your analysis can come out, and you need to those of you who did that, you need to reflect on that now. Well, what else can we see then at the world price? Well, we can see that there is a surplus between the quantity demanded. Now let's put that in. Let's draw the quantity demanded in. Let's just change a color here. If I draw the quantity demanded, you can see that at the world price, where it intersects with the demand curve, that's the quantity demanded of milk products, or in this case milk powder in New Zealand. Okay, and there is the quantity supplied. So that price, producers are willing to put that much milk powder onto the market. That is quantity supplied. Okay, well, let's take a look and see what happens then with the impact of a drought. Okay, so what have we done here? There's some few things that have happened. As you can see, we've moved the supply curve here, moved the supply curve to a new position, S1, and that reflects the fact that as a result of a drought, farmers can produce less milk. So the supply curve moves to the left. You'll notice that nothing happens at all to quantity demanded. It stays exactly the same. And importantly, and this is really important for some of you, in fact a lot of you, the price does not change as a result of the shift in supply. You can see the price curve stays exactly where it is. What does change though when the supply curve moves to the left is the quantity supplied. That quantity supplied. So QS goes back to QS1. So there's a much lower quantity supplied. Even though it's at the same price, farmers are supplying a lower quantity to the market. So overall, let's have a look then at the effect on the various players in the market. Okay, well, most of you know that calculating revenue, and it's right here, revenue is price multiplied by quantity. So if we start with the dairy farmer's revenue, we can see it used to be SW or PW times QS. Now there's PW, so that's the price they were earning, and they were selling that quantity, QS. So QS multiplied by PW would say what their revenue was. After the shift in supply though, they are now only supplying QS1. Now, as I said before, the price hasn't changed, so they're now generating in revenue PW multiplied by QS1, or let's put PW in here again, multiplied by QS1, which is clearly, those of you can see that very clearly is a decrease in revenue. So farmers' revenues will decrease, leading to a profit decrease. Okay, so what's the impact then on dairy workers? Well, as farmers try and cut costs to make up for the profit decrease, they start to lay off workers. Obviously, also they are producing less milk, so they need fewer workers. So there's a double impact there on farm workers, and that, of course, is going to lead to an increase in unemployed farm labour. So there'll be less workers required in the dairy farming industry. Now, the third point, New Zealand consumers. Now, a lot of you got caught in this. You tried to tell me that New Zealand consumers were going to pay higher prices as a result of this. It was going to get nasty for them, but you just need to look at your graph. So, if you want to know the impact, take a look back at your graph and go, well, okay, I can see the supply curve moves left, but the price didn't change at all. And quantity demanded has stayed exactly where it was prior to the shift in supply. So there is absolutely no change in price and no effect at all on consumers in this particular situation. Always, I really stress this, always look at your graph and ask yourself, what's the graph telling me? Trust that you've shown the changes correctly, and then read the graph. Okay, finally then, the New Zealand government will clearly, the New Zealand government receives revenue from taxes and both from incomes and profits. As a result of lower profits for farmers and less workers being employed, there's going to be less profits from income and less taxes from income and profits. Also, the government will face higher costs, so unemployment payments will increase, and so the government's costs will increase. Overall, this is a negative impact on the government. Okay. Now, little hint, that's not really that tricky a question. If you can just illustrate the change, as most of you did a very good job. You illustrated the shift in supply and the shrinkage in exports. But then going on to explain it, a lot of you struggled. Here's the thing, if you're able to illustrate the changes and make these key points, you're looking at merit as a minimum. If you're able to explain these points in a bit more detail, then you're definitely looking at excellence. So I hope that was helpful.